today we're talking about the newly unveiled Hamas evil plan for the takeover, the murder, the destruction of the state of Israel, far beyond what we knew and what we saw on October 7th. Not only that, it's a plan combining Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranians.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse than what happened. And these documents really prove that they had plans to reach the heart of Israel, Tel Aviv, the international airport, Ben Gurion,
yes,
and also even to meet when Hezbollah fighters will meet with Hamas fighters in Israel, in the heart of Israel, meaning that they will take control of most of the country in one day. And all of this, as always, was funded by the Islamic
by our
Republic
good friends, the Iranians.
of Iran. Yes.
Maybe today,
with the president, the newly elected president, Pezeshkian.
Masoud Pezeshkian.
Yes, exactly.
No,
we're getting better in saying
closer.
his name, yeah.
I keep chanting in front of the mirror.
One day you will.
But maybe today, unlike other weeks, we'll start with the story, and I'll preface this by saying that Hamas planned to do more than they did on October 7th, and there are several isolated events where they were prevented from a much bigger move. Hamas was supposed to push into the northern Negev. Hamas was supposed to send terrorists into Israeli communities. They did in very isolated cases. I think the longest one was there was a handful of terrorists that got into the Ashkelon area, which is a southern city on the coast. I think it was almost 2 weeks after October 7th, if I remember correctly. But they were planning to do a lot more of that to really get many terrorists into Israel, cause damage and terrorism throughout the country. Here's a story that really frames all of this. And I pulled this up because I wanted to really get the story correctly. This came out on, we're marking a year, I wanted to say celebrating, we're marking a year of...
since the October 7th attacks.
Since the October 7th attacks. And one of the stories that highlighted this year was the story of the father of a Shabak fighter or commander named Yossi Tahal. And Yossi Tahal is credited with saving several communities in the Gaza envelope area. He was supposed to be in a sort of command center. One of his soldiers was severely injured. He gets in a car, flies in a car down to the Gaza area, evacuates these injured members of his team. Again, it's one of the elite units within Shabak, which is sort of the Israeli counterterrorism intelligence organization. But they have combat active units, very high level. Some of them work within the Arabic-speaking population. He pulls out this guy, gets him on a helicopter, goes back, joins another team, forms a fighting team. Anyway, long story short, he gets killed before that day ends. But what he does in that time is he grabs a bunch of walkie-talkies or encrypted walkie-talkies from Hamas terrorists and starts reporting back what he's hearing from them to the Shabak command room. And one of the biggest and most important things is he reports on, and this is how it connects to the story, on between 150 to 200 Hamas Nukhba terrorists that are in a place called the Black Arrow, Chetz Shachor memorial site, which is next to Miflasim Kibbutz.
And in the south of Israel.
In the south of Israel. It's very close to the Gaza border, in sort of central Gaza. I've actually visited there several times during this war. It's a very peaceful place. They're able to identify that there's this motion of trucks, many of these white Hilux pickups, driving full of terrorists and scooters and motorcycles, all to the same location. They follow them. Some of them get killed on the way from ambushes and stuff like that, and are able to identify together with another drone operator that this isn't just a movement of single terrorists. There's a whole additional move that they recognize. And what that move is, it was supposed to be several hundred terrorists that are located in this place at this lookout point that you can actually see from within Gaza. And they, from there, were supposed to move deeper into Israel. And then they fight them, they kill them, they send several drone strikes to kill them, and they kill many of them. But what that was an attempt from Hamas, and this is what we're talking about today. They were planning to do much more. They were planning to go into, aside from Sderot and several other cities and communities, they were planning to go throughout Israel and kill, murder, take over, grab hostages from many cities around the country. And Hezbollah was planning to do the same thing. And now we finally have the written documents and the PowerPoint presentations, because they have those, of what they were planning to do.
Definitely, and that includes also maps with detailed plans, arrows, where to go, satellite images of key places in Israel, including military bases and including also the Israeli International Airport and other places. And what brought all of this information to the opening was a finding that happened a while ago, but was only revealed in public just recently, of a laptop of either Yahya Sinwar or somebody
Someone
who
high
was,
up in Hamas.
who was basically documenting elite meetings, like really high-level security meetings of Hamas leaders planning all this attacks on October 7th. And in these meetings, there was also documentation of coordination with Hezbollah leadership, that Hamas also sent key members into the Hezbollah territory to meet and to try and coordinate this attack with them, and also questions and demands from Hamas for around $500 million from the Islamic Republic of Iran to fund all this offensive against Israel. And what's very interesting about this, Mati, is that it's not just about the Hamas document. Now, in the ground maneuver in Lebanon, Israel found also materials and
equipment.
Information. And equipment, you mean backpacks filled with gear, with ammunitions, with missiles that are preparations for an invasion of North Israel.
I think
so it goes together.
I think the numbers here are important. People continuously say, and I'll say something before I say this. I don't like people being killed, and I wish we didn't have to harm anyone on the other side, Hezbollah or Hamas.
Except the bad guys.
Except for the fighters, definitely the civilian population. There's always this assumption that goes around of like, well, what about all the innocent civilians? Okay, let's talk numbers. Hamas terrorists sent out from a population of 2 million, first wave of terrorists, close to 7,000 elite terrorists that are sent out on October 7th. The documents now show us that that was supposed to be one out of 2 waves, with the second wave being considerably bigger. So you have a population of, at this point, tens of thousands of people that were supposed to invade Israel, fully armed, fully trained. They spent years and years and years training, planning, putting all their assets and all their energy and all their wisdom and all their cunning into a plan to invade Israel, not with a plan of a military victory, with a plan of terrorism, of murdering civilians, of kidnapping civilians, of hurting the innocent of the population. Hezbollah, exact same thing. They said, oh no, all we're trying to do is fight, it's a border dispute.
We're defending the people of Lebanon, we're the defenders of Lebanon, that's what they keep saying now.
The IDF in the first, less than a day in, within the first hours of the ground maneuver inside Lebanon, they find it's just this never-ending pile of equipment.
Tunnels that are cross-bordering from Lebanon into Israel.
But the level, so I was talking to a friend who was in Lebanon, and he's describing to me the level of the gear that they have over there.
Good quality?
Brand new.
Really?
Brand new within the nylon packaging from Iran. So, and everything, from the mortars to the guns to the vests, everything is brand new. Everything is piled up, and you see it in the footage coming out of there, piled up beautifully in houses and underground bunkers, waiting for the people who live in that part of the country to, at the moment of their call to drop their gear or drop whatever they're doing, put on their military equipment and invade the state of Israel to murder civilians. That's what they've been planning to do.
And I think, what, Tomer?
I just put you an article about what they found up in the north ready to attack, like which weapons and what.
I've seen this, and again, people, I'll say this for our viewers. If you think buying guns in the US is expensive, listen, in this part of the world, being able to equip an entire army is a very expensive endeavor. And the Iranians have spent a ridiculous amount of money, we're talking billions and billions of dollars at this point, on fully equipping terrorists with the best of the best that they can get. And that goes from, I don't know the numbers, we're talking, the cheap stuff is the RPGs, the cheap stuff is the Cornet anti-tank missiles, that some of them have a range of over 5 miles at this point.
Yeah, I remember growing up being afraid of these Cornet missiles as a tank commander. Yeah. Because it can penetrate the Israeli tanks from 5 kilometers radius.
And that's the cheap stuff. Now we're talking explosives, vehicles, and then you go to the really expensive things.
Drones.
Rockets,
UAVs,
drones, surface-to-sea missiles. So if you remember...
To target the gas reserves of Israel.
Exactly.
And all these places that are really strategic to the Israeli economy, to the Israeli energy industry. And we see, I think, Mati, what we see here is another proof, not like Israel, we don't need it, but I guess the world needs it, is another proof that these organizations...
Brand new. Everything's brand new.
From the box. Yeah, like you open a new iPhone.
It's like it's Christmas, just the terrorist version of it. Everything's brand new.
But it's way better than what we've seen that Hamas used in the Gaza Strip. I'll tell you that. In Gaza, they had a combination of improvised RPGs made out of just pipes and agricultural materials, as well as just the AK-47s from North Korea, from Iran, and from Russia, and some stuff that they made themselves in the Gaza Strip. But what we see here in Lebanon, which is a country that Israel does not surround with borders and make sure that they don't smuggle weapons in, they have really good stuff. They have all the Iranian top-of-the-line military equipment.
Well, Hezbollah is the Iranian top-of-the-line.
True.
They always have been. Hezbollah has been the best of the best when it comes to Iranian-made terrorism or Iranian-exported terrorism. They receive the best training, the best equipment, the best funding. And it's apparent in their plan. But again, to go back to this topic, let's reframe everything that's happened in the last year. It was terrible, and it was bad, and it was violent, but it was supposed to be much worse.
A lot
much worse. Their plan was, and we've talked about this many times, and it's still always in the back of my head, it's never going to go away. Hezbollah was supposed to be part of October 7th.
Listen, imagine if Hezbollah was part of it. I still don't understand why they didn't launch an attack at the same day. Like, Israel was a mess. We didn't know what's happening. Troops were moved to the north, to the south. People, like units, were gathering. And if Hezbollah would launch an attack at the same day, Israel would have been a
very
different war.
Yeah, very different.
I'm thinking now that if that would have happened, also the West Bank Palestinians and terrorist groups of Iran or Hamas would also join the attack. So I can't imagine what will happen to my house, to my family at that day. And imagine that all the reserve units of Tel Aviv, of Jerusalem, would go to the north and to the south, and then West Bank would attack at the same time. It would have been
very different.
Very, very bad, yeah. So, I don't know. I think it's also a time for optimism a little bit, that it could have been a lot worse. I mean, that's not very encouraging. But really, I think that either God saved us on that day, because there was some kind of malfunction of communication between these organizations, because that was basically the most terrible mistake that Hezbollah did, because now it's almost destroyed, especially Hassan Nasrallah.
Or was it Hamas? Because the rumor has always been...
What, that Hamas jumped the gun?
Hamas jumped the gun, no pun intended, or pun intended.
Jumped the RPG.
Pun intended, I guess. Hamas jumped the gun, and I've heard different rumors that they couldn't resist the temptation of the Nova Music Festival.
They thought they wanted another few thousand.
Or that they were afraid that there was an information leak, or who knows what it was. But that they jumped the gun. I feel like it's too easy to say that.
But also,
it was planned to Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
It's originally planned to Yom Kippur.
Well, Yom Kippur was before that. But what happened?
Nobody knows.
Look, the plan originally, according to our script,
according to Hezbollah,
according to our sources, which is the documents found in Hamas, the plan accordingly was supposed to happen several years earlier. And then other people are saying, no, it should have happened several years later, because they were building up these different capabilities. I mean, it could go many different ways. Sometimes when someone needs to pull the trigger on such a big decision, he's always going to have question marks over whether it's going to work or not, or what the other side is able to.
I think also they wanted to hit Israel when we were divided.
Yeah.
And you can say that we were very divided during that time in terms of internal politics of right and left, and all the legal system and the judicial reform and everything that happened here. So
it just goes back to, and again, this is a topic we've milled over a lot. We're always talking about, and I think everyone who has ears and eyes at this point that are functioning, you realize that Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranians, have devoted their societies, their future, for death and destruction. Mm-hmm. And these documents that have come out, they color a picture that illustrates how much more severe it is than we imagined.
Yeah.
We thought that a large percentage of their, let's call it GDP, most of it's donations and terrorism money, but let's call it, most of their economy is diverted towards terrorism and violence. Now we're learning that almost everything they do for years on years leading up to this event is buying weapons, is training terrorists, is training civilian population to hide the terrorist, now we're finding out, and I think this could be a whole podcast, is working under the nose of the peace observers, air quotes, UNIFIL, who were supposed to be preventing them, hiding and stashing weapons underneath their bases and stations, which happened this week. I mean, it's the level of hypocrisy about how truly violent they are. And I think we have to ask ourselves the question of why is Israel as a state and Mati and Yair as people, why is it so hard for us to recognize, in past tense, to have recognized how evil and how meticulous and how intentional they are with their plan of destruction? I think we're like blind to it almost.
No, I think also we talked about it before the show a little bit. It's not intuitive, because I mean, as humans, as people who want to live, to understand that the other side is keen on your destruction, and that's all they want to do for generations.
More than an idea.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of people say, you know, we call for the destruction, but you don't believe that everyone is actually doing it. Here, it's like everything in their economy, in their education system, in their manpower.
The mothers, the education.
It's all geared towards one thing only.
No, it's terrible. And also, I think that Israel knew that about Hezbollah and that they want to destroy us and everything. It was clear, but until it happened, nobody really maybe wanted to do something about it, because it takes efforts, it takes time. The moment we have hundreds of thousands of IDF soldiers in reserve, defending the country in the north, in the south, it's a heavy toll on the economy. And unless you have a reason, sadly the reason is always blood, I mean that was, shed, then there is no justification to spend this money and to get people out of their jobs and to hurt the Israeli economy. It's not also popular for the leadership to do some things like that before elections.
I don't think we knew the extent of it. And let's dive into the details a little more than we did, because
we've been fighting Lebanon for, this is the third war against Lebanon already.
No, it's different forces.
Yeah.
We started with fighting Fatah and,
but second was...
First, second Lebanon war, we're already talking about, the early Hezbollah and later Hezbollah. But, okay, let's dive into the details a little. We opened this podcast talking about the fact that this week, or earlier this week, I guess, several documents were found that sort of illustrate the planning that went into attacking Israel on the Hamas and Hezbollah side, and that highlight the fact that the plan of destruction was far more extensive than what we knew previously. It was far more meticulous, and it included many more people on the Hamas and the Hezbollah side than what was initially imagined. And to dive into the details a little, I remember one of the reports said that there were more than 17,000 images in their documentation. So they had pictures of every train station, every government and every military facility in this country, road junctions, train infrastructure, ship infrastructure, everything that you can target that will one way or another cripple the economy or the people of Israel or sow fear in the population.
And also they wanted to destroy high-rise buildings, basically to create an image like the 9/11 attacks in New York, and also the international airport, and maybe hijack a plane and crash it in a building,
Do you know what number I heard, I think it was just today or recently, which was, people are always calling this the 9/11, Israel's 9/11. And then we've referenced this, that the death ratio per capita
a lot more.
Is much, you know what the ratio is?
About 30 times more, right?
It was, 16 times more, something like that. And it was equivalent...
Per capita.
Per capita, yeah. Like if you adjust it, because the U.S. population was like 280 million.
Exactly, and 3,000 people died, and for us it's like...
So it would be the equivalent of 36,000 Americans being killed in a single day by an invasion of the country.
Yes.
And I was listening to someone talking about...
Not a bomb or a plane.
Think about this, where tens of thousands, if we're adjusting the numbers, tens of thousands, I'm not saying Mexicans are going to do this, I'm just giving this as let's say Canadians. No one would suspect them of doing this. Tens of thousands of Canadians cross the border into the U.S. and kill 36,000 Americans, kidnapping thousands more in a single day. What would the response be of the country? And then you find out a year later that this was only the tip of the iceberg.
And they planned a lot more. They planned to reach Washington.
They were planning to eradicate the country and burn and destroy and blow up as much as they can for months or years after that.
While coordinating with the Mexicans in the south, if we complete the analogy here, and being financed by Russia.
Yes.
That's the full picture of this. And this is the scale of the countries.
Well, I think this is... I'm just laughing at what would the response be? What would the response by the Americans be if something like that happened? Well, any country. Think who is the most peaceful country? The Finns. Let's say no, they're not.
Not so. They have a temper.
No,
they have a temper.
The Finns have a
huge temper.
Yeah.
What? Switzerland? Who's the most?
No, the Swiss. No, Swiss also.
Swiss are the most neutral.
I think we can't say anything without being making someone angry. Because all of them actually have quite a proud history of fighting. But let's say that a very peaceful, the Spaniards who haven't gone to war in a while, let's say that they're invaded. What would their response be? It'd be overnight destruction. It's like full of war, and everyone else would be looking as like,
right, good job, they deserve it.
Good job, guys, they deserve it. And here it's like people are saying, no, this was in retaliation. Again, let's go to the American numbers. This is in retaliation for the Trump administration putting tariffs on the Canadians and the Mexicans.
Yeah.
They deserve this attack. Who would dare say something like that? And here we are in Israel, we're thinking that they proportionally killed the equivalent in U.S. numbers of 36,000 people in a day, only to find out a year later that they've been planning and spending money to do far more than that, multiple times more than that.
And still we're being called for a ceasefire and to stop the fighting, while we still have 101 hostages in Gaza.
Let's talk a bit about Hezbollah. This is a question we've raised a bunch of times. Hezbollah, from day one in the ground maneuver in Lebanon, we've found enormous weapon stashes. And again, these aren't rusting and old. These are new,
top of the line, quality weapons.
Yeah, what apparently happened
that any soldier want to have.
Because of the what is the word, compounding effect of the beeper attack, then the subsequent attacks, the Nasrallah assassination, and then the very quick switch to the ground maneuver. And then you remember right after the beeper attack, the pager attack, we bombed 1,500 targets that night in the 24 hours that followed it.
Yeah.
And also in the days preceding that attack, we had bombed many hundreds of targets, not single targets, many hundreds of targets per day. And what that adds up to is the Hezbollah, they had planned to do a lot more. They had thousands of people at the border, and probably if we would have invaded 4 months ago, 5 months ago, we would have had to fight a much harder battle against them. But we eliminated thousands of people from their leadership and tactical command. We eliminated the head of the organization, and we targeted, if you combine all the different strikes, thousands of different targets. And what are those targets including? Those targets include many of the larger rockets that were supposed to be launched at Israeli cities. Those targets include the surface-to-sea rockets that they had that were supposed to prevent them.
Yeah, they promised 3,000 rockets every day to be launched at Israel.
Yeah.
That never happened.
I've had a discussion about this with many different people recently, because I was asking myself the question and others.
Why didn't they do it?
Where's Hezbollah that they promised us? Where are those, where's that well-equipped organization? Where are those tens of thousands of highly trained soldiers? And I think the answer is that the cumulative effect of what we did to Hezbollah in the last month or so is far, let's say specifically since the pager attack, is far greater than what we credit ourselves with, I think, as civilians. We don't understand what effect it had to knock out several thousand of their commanders in a single day. They're not dead, but they're out of the game for the most part. And then we hit many, many, many of the weapon stashes. So if it was a battery of rockets that could have been firing 100 a day, and we knocked out 20 of those rockets and also the launcher itself, they're not able to fire 100 a day. That's one off the map.
Yeah, I think that we keep giving ourselves and the IDF a hard time about not being prepared for Hamas in Gaza. But I think that against Hezbollah, the IDF, the intelligence, and the ground forces were prepared. Also on October 7th,
yes.
Immediately after 24 hours, we had troops that were moved to the border with Lebanon to prepare for an invasion. So Mati, Radwan forces, we've been hearing about this elite commando unit that is on the borders, prepared to invade, take over Israeli communities within minutes. We didn't see any of that during this war. Why?
I've asked the same question. I've had probably 10 different conversations in the last 2 weeks.
Did you get different answers? Or
I got some very good answers. Here's what I found out. Some of this comes from the IDF, some of this comes from other sources. So the cumulative effect of IDF attacks on Hezbollah is greater than we currently understand or are able to count. And I'll run through the numbers. We took out, in a period of about a month, we killed the head of the Radwan force. We killed the head of Hezbollah altogether. We killed many thousands, we injured thousands of their tactical command in the famous pager attack. We targeted several thousand different targets, not several thousand munitions. Several thousand different targets.
Allegedly.
What?
Everything is allegedly.
No, not allegedly. It's in airstrikes.
The beepers.
The pagers is allegedly it's us.
The pagers.
And the pagers. I think at this point it's clear that it's Friends of Israel, even if it isn't
Friends
us.
of Zion.
Okay. It's whatever that organization is. Someone should donate to them. Friends of the IDF.
Friends of the IDF.
Okay. Pagers for soldiers.
Pagers for Zion.
Anyway, someone should buy that domain. Anyway, back to the point. So we had the pagers, the localized assassinations, thousands of airstrikes on different targets. And those chipped away because the assumption me and you have been hearing since we were in the army as 18-year-olds is Hezbollah has 100,000 rockets and they have thousands of anti-tank missiles and the surface to air, surface to ground, surface to sea, all these different missiles. And where are they? We're asking ourselves, like, look, they've been, so they launch all these smaller munitions, but they're, for the most part, not able to punch through the Iron Dome defenses. We were promised, and this isn't like in a joking way I'm saying this, we were told for years that they were going to be able to punch through our air defenses, saturate them, and hit Haifa, hit northern communities. And we haven't seen that, definitely not to the scale that we were promised. The reason is, by what I understand, again, I've had many conversations about this, is that the IDF really was much better than we're crediting them in eliminating their command, both on the strategic and the tactical level, in eliminating many of their quality assets.
Those, meaning what, the infrastructure, the stockpiles?
The stockpiles of those several hundreds or maybe a handful of thousand of the accurate ballistic missiles. They're eliminated, most of them. We destroyed many of the launchers, many of the weapon stashes, many of the big stockpiles that were within the cities that they always said to themselves we would never target. Those are gone. And that's why the northern battle looks like it does today. IDF soldiers go in, Hezbollah fled from them, assuming they would come back a few hours later. And instead, they're just finding entire bases operated by Hezbollah empty. It took, 2 weeks of fighting, a week and a half of fighting in Lebanon to capture the first Hezbollah terrorists.
Just yesterday? We have
the other day.
The first.
It was earlier this week,
Yes, true. We just had a Hezbollah terrorist that
the first
surrendered.
The first one.
He came out of like a tunnel with his hands up and with a bag that had the socks inside it or something like that. Weird situation.
But anyway, all that to say, it's not that all the other ones have been killed so far. The IDF has been encountering small-ish numbers of Hezbollah fighters, mostly in ambushes of people that were left behind. Many of them, probably the main contingency of their force, it had fled to more northern parts of Lebanon.
Yeah, but what we hear from IDF troops that fought in Gaza and now are fighting in Lebanon is that the Hezbollah terrorists are more, I don't know how to say, more brave, more highly trained. They are waiting for the encounters. They are not fleeing and just,
They never did, though.
Carrying out these terrorist attacks of like, pop out, fire an RPG, hide, like Hamas is doing in the Gaza Strip. They are waiting for a battle.
First of all, Lebanon and the Gaza Strip are not the same place. The population,
the terrain,
do I say this without sounding racist? The quality of the population in the socioeconomical level, in their education level, in their equipment level, is much higher in Lebanon. And the Lebanese Hezbollah forces are highly trained forces. Many of them are they're veterans of multiple wars.
Of the Syrian civil war.
But even before that, some of them have been fighting Israel. Again, you'll see the faces of Hezbollah are very meticulous about, they put up the images on social media. Every time every soldier of them is killed, or every terrorist is killed, they'll have the image come up. Many of them are older people. They're people that have been fighting and training for 30 years, 40 years at this point. 50-year-olds, 48-year-olds.
No, they have also reserves like we do. They have reserve units, they have active duty units. But they train all the time.
So it's possible that there are people fighting right now in Lebanon that fought against Israel and IDF forces in the Second Lebanon War in 2006.
There's also Israelis that are now fighting in Lebanon that fought in the Second Lebanon War.
Exactly. You have units that are going back at the same time.
And by the way, I met just up north when we were there 2 weeks ago on October 7. I met an Israeli soldier that is 64 years old. He looked like Santa Claus, and he was still guarding the IDF, and he's in reserve since October 7th for a full year.
You know
Maybe we can put his picture here.
You know what they say in Hebrew?
What?
זה לא הגיל, זה התרגיל.
It's not the age, it's the drill.
It's not the age, it's the drill or the game. Look, age is only a number after a certain point, and I've had soldiers in this last war where on paper they're older than me, and I'm not especially young to be a reservist.
Yeah, yeah.
They're considerably older than me, and they're in tip-top shape. They're in tip-top military ability, and they've never stopped serving in the IDF. And those guys, so what if they're a little older? They fight as well as the younger guys, but they actually have a lot more experience and savvy.
Exactly.
And that plays a lot.
And they're not like complaining. They're very adaptive. You can use them. Experience is a very important thing.
I think now is a good time, Yair, to compliment you on the lovely hat you have on your head.
Thank you very much.
Yair has the privilege of having bad hair days. Some of us can't afford that privilege. Because some of us can't afford that privilege. Yair, show the camera that lovely cap you have on. The Pinto letters you can't order, but on the bottom of this YouTube channel, anyone who wants can go right now. You can even pause this video because it'll keep playing afterwards, even though it's live. You can pause the video, go on the store, and buy that exact, well, not this hat, this hat's been used, but the exact design of that hat.
I don't think they want this hat, you know.
Look, there's a market.
After a week of Israeli sun and
there's a market for everything. A market for everything. Authenticity sells. Anyway, you can buy anything from our store online. It ships relatively quickly. It's made for you, and it helps support this channel. There's t-shirts and sweatshirts for those who have a fall in their country, and there's hats and stickers and a bunch of other gear in it.
Yeah, for all of our programs. You have like boots on the ground shirts. You have Pray for the Peace of Jerusalem shirts. We have in our neighborhood shirts.
And we're always updating them.
Yeah, yeah.
We're constantly updating the gear that you can buy, and it greatly helps promote this channel, and it also helps other people be aware of what we're doing here. So take a second and get yourself a new t-shirt or a new hat or a new sticker or a new bottle or a new mug or there's
a dog tag.
There's so many different things there. Something. Get something. Get something.
Definitely.
Anyway, moving on. So we talked about Hezbollah. And this is a good time to pivot to what happened earlier this week. We're always talking about what if. So one of those what ifs happened this week.
With the drone?
With the drone attack.
Yes.
A Hezbollah drone, and they've been trying a lot. We know this has been a challenge. These are low-flying, slow-moving, slow radar cross-section.
I hate these drones. You know, missiles, we've been dealing with them pretty well. The Iron Dome is like, what, 99% accurate in destroying the missiles.
Yeah.
But then these drones are flying very low.
Very slow.
And they also go through the Mediterranean Sea or through Jordan and then do like a U-turn and launch the attacks. So it's not like a direct flight from Lebanon. So it's very hard to follow them. And they can be in the air for a long time.
And they loiter and they wait. And just a couple days ago, we had a terrible event where a Hezbollah drone essentially went through the roof of the dining room in one of the training bases in northern Israel for the Golani Brigade.
Yeah.
And it allegedly, what we're hearing is it launched a rocket through the roof first, and then the drone itself exploded through the roof.
That's a new ability that we just hear about.
We've
that
heard
a drone
about
can launch a rocket and then also explode.
It's the Ziad 107.
Ziad 107.
Yeah, that's
the drone.
model.
And we've heard rumors for a while about the drones being able to also launch missiles, which again, some of these drones, they're not very big. Like the body, the fuselage of the drone might be the size of the table we're sitting at. The wingspan obviously is bigger, but they're made of carbon fiber, fiberglass, or a composite material. If you shine a radar beam at them, what bounces back is very minimal. And not only that, it could be a similar cross-section on a radar to a large bird. So it's very hard to track these, and it's a terrible tragedy. It killed multiple soldiers and injured, I think the number's close to 60 injured soldiers. It was during dinner in a large base, so a lot of people in this room.
And the alarms didn't sound.
Yeah.
So usually when we have an incoming either drone attack or rocket attack, the sirens in that area start beeping and everybody gets up, goes to a bomb shelter, prepares. But this time it didn't happen. And it didn't happen also because of what you said, but also Hezbollah launched
the wingspan
multiple.
is tiny.
They also launched
1.5 meters to 2 meters wingspan. That's 7 feet wing. Yeah, 7 feet wingspan.
Yeah, it's not big. It's not a big thing. Also, the amount of explosives that this thing carries is not as big as a missile or a rocket.
But if you look, if you can get to a group of people,
but if you can get accurately
and from above launch, have you ever seen some of the slow-mo footage of suicide drones? They're now becoming much more financially, or I should say, commercially available to armies around the world. There are drones that are the size of like the prosumer sizes. 4-pound drones, this size of a body, the size of a loaf of bread, and they explode, but they explode with a shrapnel charge. And if it's done above a force, even above a vehicle, a semi-soft target, it creates a blast radius that it just sends pellets or whatever it is. It's similar to an enormous
pieces of metal, basically.
Pieces of metal in a radius of multiple meters. And look, if you're hitting civilians. We were just talking about this Mada the other day.
When we were in the north, we had a rain of those above our
head. The shrapnel?
Yeah. And the kids, it was kind of scary, but the kids of the community that was not evacuated were collecting. That was their game. They were collecting the shrapnel. And as we went live, they brought all these pieces of metals to us.
It's interesting you mentioned this. We were filming the other day, both you and I, with Mada. With the Israeli Red Cross. It's called the Israeli David Star in Israel for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
We're filming with them, and I was with them, I think an hour before this attack on the training base. Maybe even less. Maybe we left 45 minutes before the attack. We were in their situation room in their command center, and they have the real-time maps of everything that's happening everywhere in the country, including the missiles. They're connected to the military system.
Yeah.
And it just to show you how much of a need there is for first responders to be the first ones on site. Because unlike other countries, there is no separation between civilian and military in Israel. Our population is targeted by the militaries of our enemies. And on this attack on that base, the first people on site, aside from the soldiers who were there, were Mada. In the attack in what was the Druze village where the kids were?
Majd al-Shams.
Majd al-Shams, yeah. Majd al-Shams, it was Mada volunteers with Mada equipment that were the first ones on site.
Also in the Nova Festival.
Nova Festival.
Magen David Adom reached before the Israeli security forces, before the IDF. And we talked to the helicopter pilots, we talked to the paramedics of the ambulances. Yeah. It's crazy. They received a call that something happened. They understand that there's shootings. And they need to drive there with sometimes...
Into a war zone.
Yeah, sometimes an ambulance that is not bulletproof, without any weapons, without anything to defend themselves. And what they did, just take the wounded and escaped away from there to try and give them medical care on the way and to reach a hospital as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I'm happy to say that Mada are the sponsors of today's show.
Yeah.
There are many people we've worked with. I can say this hands down, without any questions whatsoever. These are some of the best people to get behind. And we're blessed. I think it's a privilege to be able to work together with Mada. They are an incredible organization, volunteer-based in Israel. More than 30,000 civilians volunteer to serve in Mada every year in this country.
Yeah.
On a regular basis, they drive ambulances, they're paramedics, they're medics.
On motorcycles, on like specific boat ambulances, stuff
What's
like that.
What's a movie called? Boats, Trains, and...
What?
That's an old
Boat, trains.
Something. Boats, buses, trains, or who remember?
Anyway, so they use all that?
And so they're like on everything that has wheels or tracks, essentially.
Or helicopters.
Yeah, or flies in the air.
Yeah.
Mada's there to show up to people. They're today's sponsor. And maybe you can give them information on how they can donate directly to Mada.
Guys. So if you want to support Israel and help really save lives in Israel, you can do so by donating to Magen David Adom. You can go to the link that you have now on the screen. It's www.savelifeisrael.com. Okay, by donating to Magen David Adom, you also help us create more content because they are one of our biggest sponsors for everything that we do here in Israel. So you help save lives and you help us to create more content for you. So I think it's a win-win. So I don't see any other organization that directly saved lives in this conflict from day one.
Well, I mean, that is what they're about. So if you want to save lives in Israel, if you want to safeguard the people of Israel, make a donation today to Mada. In the U.S. are behind the American Friends of Mada, AFMDA. But there's a link on our website to make a direct donation. It also helps us create more content from Israel. But again, it's it's wonderful. It's a wonderful organization with wonderful people in it. We've filmed with them many times, and we've seen a lot of them in the army too. Wonderful people doing amazing work.
Yeah, savelifeisrael.com.
Great link.
After.
So yeah, it's a good domain. So let's wrap up what we talked about today. Today we've been talking about the evil, the malicious, the terrible, diabolical plan of Hamas and Hezbollah to attack Israel. New documents came out in recent weeks that were found by IDF soldiers in Gaza and elsewhere, and evidence on the ground in Lebanon of how terrible the battle plan of Hamas was. They planned to do far more damage than they got away with on October 7th. And even what they did was terrible, but they were planning to do much more. They were planning to take over cities and military facilities and infrastructure in Israel and kill civilians throughout the country. And thank God that they were stopped.
And meet each other, Hezbollah and Hamas in the middle of Israel.
Hezbollah was supposed to attack on the same day and cause even more damage. Again, I think it's nothing short of divine provision and protection.
Yeah, definitely.
And protection over the people of Israel. That didn't happen. Whatever the reason was, we're happy for it.
We're happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
We're not sure we would have been here.
This year would have looked very different if Hamas carried out everything they planned to, and especially if Hezbollah
would join the party.
Would join the war. Yeah, 100%. This is an opportunity also to say that it's been more than a year now of us creating content and reporting for you almost from day one of this war. And we want to thank everyone who's been with us. If you're at home and you've been watching consistently content, it means a lot to us. Thank you. Thank you for standing with us. Thank you for writing us. Thank you for liking, for sharing. And if you haven't, pause this video, press the subscribe, the little bell next to it on YouTube. Share this video with 1 or 2 other people, and make sure you drop a like because it helps us with the algorithm. It helps us spread the truth about what's happening here in Israel to the world.
Yeah, Mati, and we want to reach 1 million subscribers before the end of this year. We're getting close. We're getting close to it, but guys, we need your help. So please subscribe. Tell your mother, your spouse, your brother,
your dog
to subscribe to TBN Israel. Open another account with your name, with another dot at the end, and then subscribe again. It really helps us to reach more people with the truth of what is happening here in Israel. And that's our purpose. What we do here is share the truth, boots on the ground, from here, from Israel, from the borders with the Gaza Strip, with Lebanon, with Hezbollah. We do this because we want to give you first-hand information on what is happening here in Israel. And why? Because it affects you. Because these evil organizations want to spread. They want to reach Europe, they want to reach the United States, and they want basically to destroy the West and everything we stand for. And why? This is a spiritual war. Okay, this is a spiritual war. That's the only reason that I have for this. So guys, if you want to help us, share the truth and pray. Pray for the situation that God will intervene, because this is a war between good and evil. Yeah. And we need to be on the side of good, of God. So pray. So join us, and thanks for everything.
And we hear it. I want to say that to people at home. If you think that we're not hearing your support and we're not seeing the likes and sharing, we do. And we know that people care around the world. And the people in this country, this year more than ever, hear the support of people like the people that watch this content, loving and supporting and caring for Israel. It has meant so much, I have to say it.
Also, we see it in the numbers of the amount of people, in the likes, but also in one-to-ones. You know, I meet people in the streets and they tell me, thanks for the content, thanks for sharing, thanks for going to the borders and telling us what's really happening. And it's really, really encouraging to see the people on a one-to-one basis. And we have churches in the United States that sit and create a specific prayer meetings, also in Australia and other places in the world, and watch the content and then pray for the situation in Israel.
That's lovely.
And makes me really feel, you know, not alone in this war. And it's super encouraging. And while I was in the Gaza Strip with my fellow soldiers, I told them that they are not alone, that millions of Christians,
so praying for them
you guys around the world, are praying for them, praying for the IDF, praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And I mean, when you have, I don't know, a few hundred millions of prayer partners, it makes a whole difference.
Agreed.
In the feeling and in the practice, fighting this war.
I think this is a good place to drop off, Yair.
No, I want to keep going, Mati.
I know.
Let's do a marathon.
It's time.
I'm on the roll now.
I think we've said enough for today. Again, I'm thankful for God for being the savior and the protector of Israel.
Amen.
7th of October was terrible, but it could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. But listen, we're optimistic. I think that the reason that we're still here, after all these evil plans and all these evil organizations that attack us, means that God is taking care of us, of Israel, that He's faithful to His promises to the people of Israel. And because of that, He's faithful to His promises to you, each and every one of you. Okay, so be encouraged. And I think this is another reason that Israel is under attack all these years, so that you can have a place to look towards and say, okay, if God is faithful to these guys, and they're not so good looking or good or smart or holy, then He's faithful to me also. Okay? So I think if you need to take something out of all this podcast, take that point that God is faithful to you.
Amen to that.
Yalla Mati, it was really
See you
fun.
next time, Yair.
See you next time. And please subscribe, share, like, whatever button you have there, click on it. And
Press
see
all
you
the
again.
buttons.
See you again next time on TBN Israel, the podcast. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online